Hi guys, today we're going to be making bramble jelly or blackberry jelly, depending on what school of thought you come from, but they are both exactly the same thing. And you may have noticed something. Blackberry jelly or bramble jelly is supposed to be one of these fabulous hedgerow type goodies that you get as the late summer progresses and to early autumn. We all look forward to taking the kids and the dog out and going blackberry picking and coming back and making blackberry and apple pies and bramble jelly and what have you. I can't honestly say that these in this Sainsbury's box here have been picked by my fair hand. Now there is a reason for that, and that is that this year's blackberry harvest is diabolical, and on top of that our local farmer has kindly cut his hedge, which means that all of those lovely bramble flowers that were coming along, and they started to go into green berries, and I was thinking, oh well, there are a few there that I perhaps can use, and I went back to our local patch the other day and the whole blasted lot had been chopped off. So there we are. So the story of that is that I'm going to have to make my bramble jelly, which I want to show you how to make it because this is the season and you may well have gone picking your own. So, you know, it needs to be shown, but I'm going to use bought ones for the reasons I've just gone over. But there is no difference. You know, there's nothing that needs to be changed in your recipe if you have got a nice big plastic bag or plastic punnet full of your precious black gold that you've spent hours picking from the hedgerows. The process will be exactly the same. There's no difference. So all we're going to do is the usual process. You'll probably, if you follow my videos, you might be getting a bit weary of this being exactly the same thing time and time again, but this is what works, you know. And if you're new to my videos, you know, this is the first time you've looked at how to make any kind of soft fruit jam, then I can assure you this is the best way to do it. So wherever your blackberries come from, a shop like mine, or from the hedgerow, which hopefully yours will be more traditionalist, what you first need to do is just make sure you have a saucepan that is big enough obviously to fit the fruit, but not so big that they only make a thin layer on the bottom. What we want to try and do when we're first boiling the fruit, the first stage of this is to boil the fruit, to soften it, to get all the juices out. In that first stage, we want to have a saucepan that has the smallest surface area, so as we get the least amount of evaporation. We're also going to put a lid on it to prevent it as well, but you know, if we can have a small surface area and the fruit nicely bulked up inside the saucepan, then we will get the least evaporation. And I'm guessing that this one's going to be big enough. So the first thing we need to do is to wet the bottom of the saucepan. So just put the water in, spill it round, pour it down the sink, and leave a little bit in the bottom. You know, just toss it down the sink so there's a tiny bit floating about in the bottom there. Then you need to weigh your. Actually, you don't need. I tell a lie. We're making jelly, so the decision of how much sugar you put into the recipe will come when we measure the amount of juice rather than from the original way to the fruit. However, we are going to be adding citric acid, so you want some rough idea of how much fruit you've got. This has got a kilo. I mean, I've got a kilo. This is a kilo. This has got a kilo. This is a kilo. So I'm going to put my 4. Are they going to fit? This is always a question, you know. Is that spatial awareness is not my greatest forte. Am I going to get all those in there without them being... Is that a bit of mildew? Also make sure, of course, especially if you've picked them off the hedgerow, yeah, there's a bit of mould on that one. Make sure you're not putting a load of insects in, you know. Insect jam is never very, or insect jelly is never very pleasant. Although, having said that, of course, the beauty of making jelly, again, is that you know, you do get rid of all the bits of wood and all the extraneous things that end up in there, and I think this might just about fit. I think they've even left a bit of leaf behind for me. They're making this a very, very natural situation. There you go, there's even a bit of leaf in there, got it. So one more one more punnet, and that's just about going to fit there. I think that's just about right. You certainly don't want to fill your saucepan any more than that, but that will be fine because we're going to put it on a very low simmer, and we want, you know, as small a surface area as I said. So that's going to be fine. Now, as I said, have a rough idea of how much fruit you've got, because we want to be able to add the right amount of citric acid. And as a rule of thumb, you want about a level teaspoon for every kilo of fruit. So let me just chuck those punnets in the rubbish. So we take our citric acid. You can purchase this from any good brewing store, or alternatively online at Amazon. It's probably the easiest thing to do. And we want a level teaspoon of citric acid in there. There we go, just shake that about. That's a bit more than a level teaspoon, so I should put a little bit of that back. There we go, that's the citric acid in there. Now what that's going to do, we're going to put that on the stove, and we're going to put it on to simmer. We're going to give it a bit of a bash about to get some of the juices out to start with and to mix that citric acid in. And then we're going to keep stirring occasionally, keep a tight lid on it, so as it, you know, stir occasionally so it doesn't stick to the bottom. Keep a tight lid on it to keep all of the steam in. We're just going to bring that really slowly to a simmer, ever so gently to a simmer. And then we're going to hold it at a simmer for about 5, maybe 10 minutes. So as all the fruit has gone to mush and we just have a nice juice in there. Okay, and the citric acid is going to help break down the fruit. It's going to supply the acid for the final jelly making process. As we all know, we need acid, pectin and sugar to make good jam or jelly. Those are the 3 magic ingredients. So it's going to supply the acid for the final jelly, but it's also, the acid in there is going to draw out as much of the natural pectin as we possibly can. Soft fruit like blackberries, raspberries, strawberries and so on aren't very high in pectin. So the more natural pectin you can draw out, the less chance it is that you're going to need to supplement it with some liquid pectin at the final stage. Okay, so this is going to go on to simmer, and I will come back and show you the next stage once this fruit has simmered down to a nice pulp. Okay, so here we are back again then, and you will see from here, let me just get the fruit over, you will see that there's a nice gout of steam there. Now this has all boiled down, it's just been simmering away. It's boiled down to a nice, here's my wooden spoon, it's boiled down to a nice fruit puree. Okay, now the purists amongst you would perhaps say that this now ought to go into a muslin cloth and be passed through the muslin overnight and drip into a receptacle, and so as it's all clear and absolutely perfect. Well, if you wish to do that, that's fine, and you will get the perfect clear jelly. However, I haven't really got time to mess about like that. Actually, I'm going to want that wooden spoon. I should bring it back over here. I haven't really got time to mess about like that, and especially with dark fruits, you know, like blackberries and blackcurrants, if it's a bit cloudy, it doesn't really show, especially not if you're just using it for yourself, giving it to friends as Christmas presents or something like that. It doesn't really matter if it's a bit cloudy because you can't see through it anyway because it's almost black. For a show, that's a different story. So I kind of tend to cheat, and all I do is I stick my puree through a sieve. So all we've got to do is pour our puree carefully, because it does splash everywhere and it's mighty hot too. So we need to carefully, he says carefully, having splashed it absolutely everywhere, carefully transfer our puree to the sieve. And then if you just keep scraping the puree around in the sieve, you will find that the liquid will go through a lot easier. Okay, so if you just keep scraping that around like that, and you will find that you can almost get the pulp that's left behind, you can almost get it dry by doing this. You can squeeze every last little drip of the juice out. and we catch it in the measuring cylinder. And once we've got everything that we think we can get out of each bit, then the puree needs to go. The pulp that's left behind needs to be obviously chucked away, that's discarded, and we just keep the juice. And then we're going to have to measure this juice. You always scrape the goodies off the bottom of the sieve as well, by the way. That's always where all the good stuff ends up. And what we will be doing is I will continue to process the rest of what's in that saucepan, and I will measure it, and for every litre of juice I get, I think I'll probably get about a litre's worth. For every litre of juice I get, then I want to add 1 kilogram of sugar. Okay, but we'll have a look at that stage. I'm not going to waste your time watching me process the rest of this pulp here. I'll turn the video off, and we'll come back when I've measured out the juice for the sugar adding and turning it into the final jelly. Okay, so I'll see you then. Right, so here we are at the actual jelly making stage, and I managed to get in this jug here, I managed to get half a litre of juice out of those, out of that kilogram of blackberries, and it's quite strong. In fact, to be honest, I actually got just under half a litre, and I topped it up with water. Now, I was happy to do that because I could see that the juice was incredibly thick, and I know from experience that that means there's loads and loads of pectin in there. The citric acid has done its job and drawn out as much pectin as it possibly could from the blackberries, and so I knew that it would take a little bit of extra water, which of course, if you know that's going to be the case, then of course it's worth adding it, because we want to make as much jam out of our hard-won blackberries as we possibly can. But it is a judgment call, and it requires experience. And so if you're not happy, I don't know whether you can see on the from the video that the juice that's in that measuring jug is falling down in sort of tiers. It's not behaving, I don't know whether you can see that, behaving quite like water would. It's almost got a sticky quality of its own, sticking to the glass of the measuring jug. That tells me that it's really full of pectin, and that I can add that little bit of extra water. So I added a bit of extra water to make myself half a litre of juice. Okay, now I'm going to warm that up. I need to turn the gas on to do that, and the correct knob. It's always difficult to find the right one. You'd think I'd know by now, owning this cooker for goodness knows how long. So that now needs to be warmed back up, because obviously it's cooled down considerably while I've been sieving it through the sieve and what have you, and I also added a bit of cold water to it. So it's going to take a bit of warming up. I've measured out my sugar. Now, some people heat their sugar up in the oven first and all this business, but I don't think any of that is necessary. If you've made sure that you have got sufficient pectin by extracting it well, using a low heat with citric acid, and you've managed to pull all the pectin out of your fruit, I don't think you need to worry about all these fancy tricks. This should set absolutely fine. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to let that juice warm up now till it gets nearly to boiling. Then I'm going to add the sugar, and I'm going to bring it up to a rolling boil. Now, I'm not going to bore you and waste video time just watching that happen. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off the video now, and I shall bring it back to you when the rolling boil has been reached, and we can, or is coming to a rolling boil, and we can watch what that looks like, so as you know what to look out for, so as you know that your jam is going, your jelly in this case, is going to set. So I'll come back to you when we're getting close to that. Okay, so here we are now. We can see that this is now coming to a rolling boil. We can see that kind of fizz round the outside. Okay, that's what we call a rolling boil, and you can see, you know this is going to set by the fact that the scum in the middle is already forming a skin, and that tells you that this jelly is without a doubt going to set. And that's all I need to do. That is now ready. That will set. I needn't cook it any more and lose any more of the flavours. Just turn it off the heat. That's it. That will guarantee to set. And of course, by boiling it as little as possible, you will maintain as much of that beautiful, delicate aroma that you get with blackberries. So that is now ready. All that needs to be done with that is the scum needs to be skimmed off of the surface. It needs to cool a little, and the scum needs to be skimmed off of the surface, and then it just needs to be jarred up. So we'll take a look at that shortly once it's cooled. Okay, so here we are at the final stage then. The jelly came to the rolling boil, as you saw. I've just let it cool slightly, and I'm now going to de-scum it. I can see it's going off because it's starting to go off actually in the pan, and it gives me the opportunity to do quite a good de-scumming job. I can just take all that scum over to one side, which you can't see at the moment, but I shall plop it onto the hopefully I can get it all off. Now it goes onto my spoon rest, and that's going to come off quite nicely, which is a bit of a, you can take as long or as little time as you like over this. I always say that the first jar is for me, because normally what happens is that any little bits of scum that you've managed to miss and left behind, which in this case will be quite a few bits, because of course I'm just doing it quickly so as you can watch the video rather than be bored to tears watching me endlessly de-scum my jam. But that's the majority of it off anyway. And so what we do now, you can see what a fantastic colour that is. Absolutely amazing, isn't it? Quite incredible colour. So all we need to do now we've de-scummed it, is to pour it into our measuring jug so as we can easily handle it. So that goes in there. You can see the skin, or I can, I don't know whether you can from there. You can see the skin keep forming every time. It only takes a few seconds and a new skin starts to form. So there we are, and remember, this measuring jug, because it's after you've turned the heat off, needs to be sterile. The golden rule, everything after the heat is off that comes in contact with your jam or jelly needs to be sterilised. Okay, so that's sterilised. I've got sterilised jars. You'd have used a sterilised wooden spoon to scrape the scum off. Okay, and I've got some lovely jars here from Wares as usual. Beautiful kind of country feel to these jars. I don't know quite whether they are true Bon Maman jars or not, but they're gorgeous. You'll find them quite easily under their preserving jars, and I think for a country preserve like Bramble jelly, these are rather nice. And so it's just off with the lid, hold the lid up, pour your jelly in. As I say, this one will take any of the original, or any of the scum that was left behind, so this one will be for me. Pour it in, couple of millimetres from the top, okay, and seal down tight and leave to cool. And what a beautiful product. There you go. Fantastic, very hot, very hot Bramble jelly, and that is going to be absolutely delicious. Perfect present for Christmas. A label on there and a nice little gingham bonnet look absolutely glorious. And it's as simple as that, really. I know my Brambles were bought from a supermarket. Hopefully you'll have more luck on your rambles on a lovely Sunday afternoon and be able to get a nice big bag blackberries and make your bramble jelly from the hedgerow. It's far more satisfying, I agree. But you know, needs must, as it were, and I wanted to get this recipe up on YouTube for you all to be able to see. And I'm afraid it wasn't very easy for me to get some wild brambles, or brambles and blackberries. So there we are. So enjoy. Till next time. Goodbye.